So hello and welcome to another episode of Good Fat Life. And we have a very special guest with us today, and I'm really excited to talk about movement, right?
Yes.
With Christie Hajduk.
That's correct.
I got it right? So it's a very special day because A, Christie's here, and B, movement is a topic I have struggled with my entire life. And so when we changed it from that E word, which I won't mention, it shifts everything.
Absolutely.
So welcome, Christie.
Thank you.
And just before I have to do a little plug for the magazine for Good Fat Life. After our episode, I'm going to pick up the next issue for the April, May, June issue.
Oh, awesome.
And drop some off at Barnes & Noble where they're selling now, which is very exciting. And so check it out. So that said, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
First off, are you native Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Michigander.
Yes,
right?
I am.
I'm
Native
like,
Michigander.
There we go. I'm a Oregonian. And so I'm like, wait. Okay. So native Michigander, you do some really interesting things. I mean, You're a yoga teacher, right? But you have a fascination with feet.
I do.
And have really done some wonderful workshops around feet.
Yes.
So tell us how that happened.
It's an often forgotten part of the body that you really don't think about until it's challenged. And I got into it just because I was just fascinated with the way the body moves. After I got out of yoga teacher training, I realized how much I didn't know about the body. A lot of the times when you start to dive into a topic, you really realize how much you do not know. So I really started to dive into that. And I really wanted to bring to my classes, to my teaching, this very down-to-earth message, this very down-to-earth style of teaching that was good for everybody. And with that, I saw that there was a lot of struggles with balance and stability in different yoga poses. And when you really start to break down into it, a lot of that just comes from the feet. A lot of that comes from the feet. A lot of that comes from not engaging the feet, and then we can't engage the rest of the body. And I'm not your typical Instagram yogi teacher. And if you go onto any of my social profiles, you're not going to see these crazy poses because I just love real world movements. Finding those movements that fit your lifestyle. So one is I love to run around barefoot. I grew up running around barefoot and just enjoying that natural life. I lived behind an apple orchard. So I always got to go run through the fields, quite literally. But getting into the feet, it's just, I found that even as someone who loved to, walk around barefoot, I always bucked when I had to put shoes on. And I'm like, I hate shoes. They just don't feel comfortable. They don't feel natural to me. And even when I was in the corporate world, I was always known to wear flip-flops. And then I always had my heels under my desk. And I'd always put them on at the very last minute because I just despised having to wear them. So getting into that, I just, I found this just world of like, what is the natural foot? And why do we continue to put our feet in these torture devices?
So what does that look like? I mean, when you talk about feet, as far as what have you learned? I mean, what would you say for people to do differently? Or what happens? What happens when we put our feet in shoes right?
I mean, that's a great question. And really the perfect place to start is what happens when we do put our feet in shoes. And if we were to look at our shoes right now, are they actually foot shaped? That'd be the first question that I'd have you ask yourself is, do your shoes actually hold the shape of a foot? Most of us don't have toes that are pointed in that V shape. So when we put our feet in shoes that are too narrow, we're pushing all of the toes towards the center of the foot. That starts to cut off the circulation in the bottom of the foot. So one, we're already cutting off that blood supply, that essential circulation down to the feet. Then when we're wearing shoes that have a hard sole on them, we're completely losing that connection with the ground. Not only are we losing that connection that we need for our nervous system to help us manage and predict the movements that we need to navigate our environment, we're also getting rid of all of those sensations in the bottom of the feet that really help us to adapt our walking patterns, whether we're on loose gravel, brick, or cement. So there's lots of different lots of different nuances that come with wearing a shoe that doesn't fit the natural foot shape or just is too tight for our feet. So it's that disconnection with the ground.
Or too stiff, too rigid?
Yep, too stiff. We can't roll through the feet. There's actually a lot of cultures that are in really cold climates, they wear shoes with a flexible bottom because you need that movement in your foot to keep that circulation, to keep the warmth. So having that
That's
flat
interesting, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, because when we move, we create heat.
Yeah.
Right? What's the difference in those shoes? Because we're in a cold climate. I mean, we need shoes on our feet. It's cold.
Oh, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And shoes have a purpose. They protect our feet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fashion forward, too.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
Right?
They're a part of our expression.
They are. So what kind of a shoe would you wear in the winter to help you, but that would facilitate your foot getting the movement and creating that warmth?
So there's actually a lot of shoe brands that make a minimalist shoe, or a barefoot shoe is what they're often called. And with those types of shoes, you're usually seeing a wider, what's called a toe box. So that's the area where our toes rest in our shoes. So you'll see a wider toe area. You'll also see a very flat bottom. So there usually won't be any type of heel. It's called zero drop. So they'll have absolutely no heel on them. And they'll have a thin but flexible sole. So usually, if I took my shoe off, I could roll it up into a little ball. It's that flexible.
Oh, okay. I am seeing ads now for shoes that are rolled up and, and they'd be great for packing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Right? Makes it
Absolutely.
easy. So as you're doing your research and studies, so then how's this shown up in your practice?
So it's really just taking that power down into the feet. I actually just taught a class the other day, and I had a gentleman come up to me and say, that was the best tree pose I've ever done. I've always kind of swayed in the wind and, had to drop my foot down. And when he was balancing on one foot, just having that simple cue of press down into the big toe. Our big toe is connected to our pelvic floor. And we all have those. So, being able to just create that line of tension, and tension equals stability in the body. So just that simple act of press into the big toe activates that tension line all the way up to that bottom of the core.
So I'm doing Pilates, right? And so I'm so proud of myself. I'm up to 4 times a week.
Oh, that's awesome.
And but the reason I bring it up is because when I've just found I'm falling in love with my body in ways I never was before, because as those little muscles are engaging and doing the work the way they were designed to do it, suddenly things become so much easier.
Oh, absolutely.
Just moving, I'm finding, as you were saying, we were kind of joking at the beginning, but moving is magical. Exercise sucks.
Yeah.
but moving, right? And even Pilates can be rough. It can be hard in some way. But there's that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm moving my body the way it was designed to move. And suddenly it becomes a whole different experience.
Yeah. When you talk about, a lot of the times people, take these exercise programs because of a certain reason. So maybe it's, I want to be able to do this activity, or I want to look this way. But a lot of the times, if we strip down those whys, why are you really doing this? Why are you really committing to this program, committing to this boot camp, whatever it may be? Why are you doing that? It's usually to maintain some sort of meaningful movement in their life. And a lot of the times when I have clients come to me, they say things like, well, I live on a lake and my beachfront is down 50 stairs. So I have to be able to continue to go up and down the stairs. I don't want to be one of those retired individuals where I get to stare at my lake. I want to be able to enjoy it. Or even just working with someone and saying, well, I'm having a hard time even opening jars. I'm losing my grip strength. So a lot of the times when we really strip down the why, it comes to just wanting to continue to enjoy life. And at the end of the day, that's not an exercise program. It's movement.
Right. It's movement. So we had Dr. Paula Ruffin on a few weeks ago, and her question was, how do you want to live the last 10 years of your life? Right?
Yeah.
And so extrapolate that now to today. What do we need to be doing so that we have that capability to live the way you want to live?
Absolutely. I mean, we all, when we are looking at our retirement or, how we want to spend that, that portion of our life, the goal is not usually to sit on the couch. That's usually not the goal.
To be honest, I have never heard that. I have never once heard somebody say, man, I just want to sit on the couch.
Yeah. The goal is usually not the couch. It's usually, I'm going to take that dream trip across the country. I'm going to, go do that dream activity. I'm going to go golf just about every day. And so usually it takes movement, whatever it is.
Or I'm going to garden, or I'm going to play with my grandkids, or, there's lots of things that people kind of dream of doing. But you're right. But it's movement.
Yeah.
You have to be moving. But so what about, I even hear my kids that are now, my youngest will be turning 40 soon, which is just hard to believe. It's like, where did those years go?
Right.
But the other thing is that they're like, I don't feel so young anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
But, from my perspective, 40s, you're not babies anymore, but you're still young. But I hear people saying, I can't do what I used to be able to do.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in the, where you're from? In the world you're in, are your classes made up of people, and your clients, are they all ages? Mm-hmm. And what are you seeing with the different ages?
It's all different ages. I do tend to have some older individuals that love to come to the class because I include a lot of very joint healthy movements. Let's move the way the body is meant to move. And let's honor the way the body's meant to move. But what I'm seeing in a lot of my classes is actually a lot more corrective measures. So surgeries, replacements of the knee, and different things like that, because we're either using the body incorrectly for long periods of time, or we just have no variety. We have a very low movement profile is sometimes what I say.
That's interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, on my way over here, I was listening to a program on NPR, and they were talking about food profile, right? It's like, I have 5 things I make, and I rotate it, rinse and repeat. So, but I never thought about that with movement. Mm-hmm. But so talk about that a little more.
Yeah. I encourage people to, especially like when I'm first working with like a new client, if I'm working one-on-one with them, I encourage them to actually sit and take stock of their movements and really get nitty gritty about it. Like, are you sitting on the couch? If you're sitting on the couch, or you're getting out of a chair, are you using your hands to get yourself out of that chair? When you go to sit down, are you just completely plopping into it, or are you maintaining control the entire time? Are you spending time walking? Are you going up and down stairs? Are you coming into a squatting position? Or are you just hinging at that waist and bending over? Are you reaching up overhead to the side? Are you rotating through the body? So there's lots of different ways that we can move. So what are your natural patterns of movement? And a lot of the times we end up spending so much time with our legs and our arms in front of our body. And with technology, now a lot of us are adopting this, this hunched, this C position where we're curved over the front of the body.
We did a thing today that was like, but it feels so good. Mm-hmm. That is so interesting, because you're right. It's just, we just get in these ruts.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to do a group of us for Good Fat Life. We're going to do a marathon in October.
Oh, I love that.
And it's really quite exciting.
That's definitely a good challenge.
It is a good challenge. I used to be, we're walking it.
Okay.
We're walking, because I used to be a marathon walk coach for the Leukemia Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And so now we're working on what do we need to do so that we can do it with ease.
Right.
But it's finding, so there's a couple things there. It's that finding community to do it with, because then it makes it fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You need that.
And
we as humans need community and connection.
Right. We do. But also, as you're talking, I'm thinking, I want to, because I have to design the training program. And I do have the curriculum that we used to use back when I was doing the leukemia walks. But to your point, I want to pull in other things so that it's comprehensive.
Yeah.
Because as long as we're doing it, let's maximize our
right.
Let's maximize our opportunity because we're being mindful around it.
Yeah. And a lot of it too, and what I try to encourage people as well is you need to also not only look at what the actions are that are required for that activity, but what's the inverse of that? What's the opposite of that?
So tell me more.
So like I have I know someone who used to do hands-on massage, and they switched to a different modality because their wrists and their shoulders were hurting. And after a couple of years, again, doing the same repetitive movement, but using their feet, there were other issues that came up. So it's finding that if I'm constantly doing this, maybe I need to spend more time up here. Or moving in the opposite way that we do. So if we're spending a lot of time sitting with our legs at a 90-degree angle, and we don't try to do anything that's the opposite of that, which may be just standing up and spending more time walking where those legs can extend behind the body. If we're not,
yeah, I never really thought about that either.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So we can be really good at something, and that's our body loves to adapt and create the least path of least resistance. So if we spend a lot of time sitting, and sometimes that's just what has to happen if we work at a desk in front of a computer. So that's why I love to think about, okay, well, I spend a lot of time with my legs in front of my body. What can I do to create some variety and change that up a bit?
Put my legs behind my body. Mm-hmm. So one thing I got out of our last workshop, 3 different people, they hadn't rehearsed it, they hadn't talked to each other, said how important it was to move our lymph system, right? Because it doesn't have its own pump. And so the way that we do that is by jumping. Movement, and jumping is the best way. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want to have another piece of equipment where, have like a rebounder.
Yeah.
But jump rope works, or just jumping. And I mean, to be honest, I haven't jumped up and down. It just seemed like way too much energy to jump off the floor. So I challenged myself last week to do it. And it took a little while to get just energy enough to actually lift myself up off the floor. And then I actually was able to do it. And I was talking to Dr. Adam Rushford about this, my chiropractor, and he was saying those are twitch muscles. And if we don't use them, that we lose them. Yes. Right? And they're so important to our just overall well-being. And then I learned that there's fast twitch muscles and slow twitch muscles. And so what do you know about those and how we engage those muscles?
Yeah, it is it's cliche, but it is you have move it or lose it. We have to use them. And that's another reason, what just interests me about the feet too, is that we have these muscles, and the shoes start to dampen those. And they start to dampen those response times, or just the responses at all, because they're not getting the stimulus that they need to say, hey, I need to activate. And I need to do something here. It's another reason why sometimes, people get shin splints a lot. We're getting impact forces that aren't being properly cued or distributed because we don't have that solid foundation.
What about... Okay, so that's... I'm sorry, my brain's going like, okay. So what would you say? I mean, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, all right, so where do I start? How do I know if my feet are healthy? What's some ways to test and see if your feet are responding, properly, and their responses are good and they're strong? Yeah. I mean, how would you assess that?
So first I would, if I was assessing somebody's foot, I would just take a look at it. Let's take your shoes off, take your socks off. Let's look at a nice bare foot. Let's see what the toes are doing. Where are the toes wanting to go? A lot of the times the toes are wanting to go in towards the center line of the foot. So that's where you start to see bunions, or you start to see toes starting to overlap because they're being pressed towards the center. And that's also creating really tight tissues within those toes as well. So just even the ability to spread the toes apart. Can you spread the toes apart? Can you get that nice wide foot?
Can you physically take your foot and spread your toes apart?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Can you physically spread your toes apart? And when, whether it's the foot workshop or even just like in a yoga class or in personal training where we're working on balance and stability, can you do a short foot? is it really fatiguing to do a short foot?
What's a short foot?
So a short foot is you're essentially grounding in through the feet. So you're grounding in through the feet, and then you're going to really activate that arch. So if you had your foot flat on the floor, you'd press in through those toes. You'd almost imagine this little tripod. Your big toe, your little toe, and your heel create this tripod on your foot. And then it's almost like you're sending that energy into the arch, almost like you're trying to pull the toes towards the heel. And then you lift up through that arch.
So you lift your toes up off the ground?
So the toes stay on the ground.
Okay.
So you're going to press in through the toes. You're going to press in through the heel. And then you're going to energize them towards one another. So another way I like to cue it, if I'm in a yoga class, is we're going to create this short foot, but we're going to add a little bit more to it. So we're pressing in through that tripod. And then we start to dial the legs away. So think of the feet as they're glued into the ground. They're not going to move, but we're going to try and move them. And so we're going to almost try to click those heels together. And if we were to try to click those heels together, those legs are naturally going to start to rotate away from the body. That's going to lift up through that arch and create a really strong foot. What it's also going to do is create a line of tension through the connective tissue all the way up to the core. So you're literally creating a foot to core connection and creating this full body stability.
And then do you hold that for a while?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So then we practice holding it and turning it on, turning it on, turning it off, and then using it as we're going through balancing poses.
It's fascinating because, I mean, that's the biggest risk as we age is that we're going to fall. And when people fall and break stuff, which happens a lot, it can be the demise.
Absolutely. It's one of the leading causes of injury related death.
Right. Is falling.
Injuries due to falling or infections.
Okay. So I know you've got some events coming up. So tell me about them.
Yeah. So I am doing the Foundational Health from the Ground Up workshop. So we're literally going to build our foundations, which are our feet. And that is all about exploring the feet and kind of sifting through what we thought we knew about them and what we thought we knew about our shoes, but in a very applicable way. So anybody who attends these workshops, they're going to walk out with exercises to help build the strength, build the mobility. Even if they don't want to switch to a minimalist shoe, you can still work on your foot strength because our feet are quite literally tied to our entire body. We have connective tissue that runs from the bottom of the feet all the way up to the forehead that helps to actually manage those muscles in the forehead. So
just crazy.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
we are literally fully connected. So that workshop is being held April 6th, and the proceeds to the April 6th workshop, part of those are going to go to the Yoga Strong Foundation.
Oh, yeah, they do great work.
They do. I love their mission. I love working with them. And then there's also going to be that same workshop offered again on April 27th.
Okay. All right. And so where would people find out about it if they wanted to know more?
So you can look at 925 Wellness on Instagram or on my website. So if you were to type that out, it's 925 Wellness.
Wellness. I always think of it as 925.
And that's right? What it is. It's what it is. It really is because I wanted it to be, it's got a lot of nuances. I wanted it to be my full-time job. I came from the corporate world. And so I'm like, I really want my 9 to 5 to be helping to spread this message and helping people. So
tell me, just give us the quick version on how that happened. So you had a dream to have your work be around feet, wellness, or movement. I kind
of fell into that or walked into that, I guess, if you want to say that. But I used to do advertising, so I used to work in the digital space and advertising, and did that for many, many years. And I kind of hit this point where I just felt burnt out. I felt burnt out of everything, and when I really sat down and took time to look at, well, what is it I want to do? And I'm like, it's not sit in front of a desk, in front of a computer. That's really not what I want to do. What am I spending all my time doing? I'm spending all my time reading articles and research about the body and learning about the connective tissue and learning about the feet. And I'm like, I love this. I absolutely love this. I love to teach. And I just love to share information. And so I actually started teaching before I quit my corporate job, and it lit me up, absolutely lit me up. And I always just walked away overflowing
with that. And so, so at what point did you make that decision that you were going to take that leap?
So I made that decision at the end of 2020. I'm like, you know what? There's lots of transitions going on. So now is that time.
That's right. That was right in the middle of COVID.
Yeah.
I hear so many stories of people that just said, because of the break, right?
Yeah.
We had time to step back and go, what am I really doing with my life?
Right.
Or what do I want to do with my life?
Yeah.
So how exciting. So you're pushing 4 years here.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I am.
That's great. I love what you do. So again, where would you have people start? So they're like, maybe I should pay attention to this, to my movement.
Right. Honestly, the best place to start is spend more time barefoot.
Okay.
Spend more time barefoot. That's the easiest place to start. There's some people who they don't spend any time barefoot. We've got this, weird relationship with our feet. And some people just always either want to have socks on or slippers in the house, or just always wear shoes. So it's first spend time barefoot. Once you start to spend time barefoot, you're going to start to notice what your feet need. Because you're removing that heel, you're starting to connect. Your feet might start to feel tight and tired because they're weak, and you're working them more when you're barefoot because they need to move more. Yeah. So spend more time barefoot. And then that next step would be expose yourself to more textures. So go outside, go walk in the grass, go walk on the concrete. And then as you start to build up that tolerance to both the sensation and the actual surfaces, then you can start to explore new ones. But simply just spend more time barefoot.
I was raised on a farm. Barefoot was the name.
Yeah.
Right. And I love being barefoot, but I do get that there are people who don't.
Yeah.
So, good. Well, great advice. And for our viewers, check out goodfatlife.com. The new issue will be up on April 1st, which is really very exciting. And I do want to take a little minute and do a shout out to one of our sponsors, Hands on Health. And, talking about movement, Dr. Adam Rushford is such a proponent of movement, and I learned so much. He's got a great article in the magazines now, and every time I read it, I'm just like, oh my gosh. But their whole practice is really dedicated to making you and your body feel amazing. And if you walked in there in any kind of a mood, I guarantee you're going to walk out feeling better than when you walked in, physically and emotionally, because it's just a positive place to be. So that's Hands on Health Chiropractic in Brighton, Michigan. So on that, I say thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot. You've given me always things to think about. And I love that you don't use the E word, right?
Yes. I don't like it myself, so I'm not going to use it.
There you go. So thank you, and go out and live your good fat life.